Welcome to this explainer. Now, think about a typical family business for just a second. If a family enterprise manages to survive to a third generation, well, it's generally considered a massive success. But imagine a family business that doesn't just survive 3 generations, but outlasts empires, survives the birth of an entire nation, weathers a grueling civil war, and powers right through the Great Depression. I mean, it sounds statistically impossible, right? Yet today, we're looking at the exact place that defied those staggering odds. We are exploring the unbelievable 400-year reign of the Carter family. Okay, let's dive into this. Our story begins all the way back in 1613. To put that into perspective for you, this is just 6 years after the founding of Jamestown, which was England's first permanent colony in North America. A royal land grant from King Charles I carved what would eventually become Shirley Plantation right out of the harsh, untamed Virginia frontier. But here's the number that will literally stop you in your tracks. 400. For over 4 centuries, this exact same piece of land, nestled right along the James River, has been continuously operated by the exact same family. It wasn't abandoned, it wasn't sold off in little parcels, and it certainly didn't collapse under the heavy weight of history. Which brings us to 11. That represents 11 generations of unbroken stewardship. And because of this astonishing continuity, Shirley Plantation isn't just, a really old farm. It officially holds the title as the absolute oldest, continuously family-owned business in all of North America. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with America's oldest family business, then we'll look at tobacco and human cost, followed by the Carter Dynasty surviving centuries of conflict, and we'll wrap up with a living historical legacy. Let's start with Section 1. America's oldest family business, 1613 to today. Let's move to and see how this builds, because we really need to set the chronological foundation here and trace how this dynasty took hold in the Virginia soil. The land was initially granted in 1613 to the royal governor, Sir Thomas West, Lord de la Warr, who named it after his wife, Lady Cecily Shirley. But the family business truly kicks off in 1638, when Edward Hill I acquired the land and started farming. Fast forward a bit to 1723, and we hit a massive turning point. Elizabeth Hill, the heiress to the estate, marries John Carter. This officially merges 2 incredibly influential families into the Hill-Carter dynasty. And as you'll see, their grip on this land remains so remarkably tight that they managed to hold on to it all the way through the devastating climax of the Civil War in 1865 and far beyond. Section 2. Tobacco and human cost, the price of wealth. To truly understand this estate, we have to look objectively at its economic engine. Survival in the harsh, unpredictable world of the 17th century depended entirely on agriculture, and one single crop defined this entire region: tobacco. John Rolfe's successful experiments with the plant sparked a massive economic boom. Tobacco wasn't just a plant they harvested, it was literal currency. It was the crucial export to England that built vast fortunes, transformed Virginia into an economic powerhouse, and basically secured the Shirley Plantation's survival. So the crucial point is, who was actually doing all this grueling work? Well, the labor force shifted dramatically as the centuries progressed. In 1616, John Rolfe documented that Captain Isaac Madison commanded 25 white English indentured servants who worked for a fixed number of years just to pay off their passage across the Atlantic. But as economic conditions eventually improved back in England, that labor source completely dried up. By the early 1700s, the plantation transitioned to relying completely on enslaved African labor. For the next 2 centuries, men, women, and children were bound for life, serving as the primary workforce until slavery was abolished in 1865. It's a stark, undeniable contradiction. Incredible agricultural achievement built directly upon a foundation of profound human injustice. Moving on to Section 3, the Hill-Carter Dynasty, Architectural Endurance. As the 18th century dawned, the Hill-Carter family's immense wealth needed a physical manifestation. They really needed a headquarters that proved, without a doubt, they were here to stay. So they built the Great House, which was completed in 1738. Remember Elizabeth Hill marrying John Carter back in 1723? Well, John Carter was the son of Robert King Carter, who was arguably the wealthiest and most politically influential man in mid-1700s Virginia. When they joined forces, they began constructing this absolute masterpiece of early American architecture. And what's truly incredible is that the first floor remains largely in its exact original state even today. Now, what's really interesting about this is the architectural marvel waiting inside that Great House foyer. It's a 3-story flying staircase built entirely without visible supports. It literally just seems to effortlessly float upward. It's elegant, it's mysterious, and honestly, it serves as a perfect physical metaphor for the Hill Carter family themselves, maintaining this invisible, enduring, and unshakable grip on the estate through the centuries.
The preservation here is an absolute triumph. As architectural historians often point out, it is the most intact 18th century estate in Virginia. When you walk the grounds today, you aren't just looking at a recreated main house. 8 original colonial outbuildings, including the 2-room kitchen house, the laundry, the ice house, and the smokehouse, are perfectly intact, sitting exactly where they were built hundreds of years ago.
Section 4. Surviving Centuries of Conflict, Existential Threats.
Simply existing for 400 years means, well, you're invariably going to find yourself in the crosshairs of history. If you map out American history, violence repeatedly brushed right past Shirley's doorstep. They survived the 1622 Indian uprising that killed roughly 350 nearby colonists. They made it through Bacon's Rebellion. During the American Revolution, the British Army, including the infamous turncoat Benedict Arnold, landed just down the river at the nearby Westover plantation. They survived the total economic collapse of the Great Depression. But without a doubt, their closest call came during the American Civil War. And this brilliantly illustrates how survival often requires incredible adaptation. In July of 1862, the brutal Battle of Malvern Hill raged nearby. Practically overnight, the pristine grounds of Shirley Plantation were transformed into a chaotic field hospital, completely covered with wounded and dying Union soldiers waiting to be shipped down the James River. The Hill Carter women stepped right out of their home and actively joined in feeding and nursing these Union casualties. Their actions were so incredibly impactful that Union General George McClellan actually issued a federal safeguard, specifically protecting the Shirley property from any destruction for the remainder of the war. Finally, Section 5, a living historical legacy, evolution to modern times. So how exactly does an 18th century estate survive into the modern 21st century? It requires a massive pivot. You just can't rely on 17th century economics forever, right? The family business had to evolve. They shifted away from relying solely on tobacco, diversifying their agricultural output into crops like corn, wheat, and soybeans. And eventually, to help fund the intense preservation required for the Great House and all those outbuildings, they opened their doors to the public. Today, it operates this brilliant dual existence. It's a modern, working agricultural farm and a profound historical site. And this is what makes Shirley Plantation so incredibly unique. It is not some sterile museum frozen in time, operated by a distant corporate trust. The 11th and 12th generations of the exact same family continue to live in the upper floors of that house. They work the land, they steward the estate. They are a living, breathing business that stubbornly refuses to fade into the history books. Which leaves us with this truly provocative question to ponder. What does it actually mean that a single family's backyard contains 400 years of continuous American history? I mean, from the first English settlers and Native American conflicts, to the harrowing realities of enslaved labor, to the bloody battlefields of the Civil War, right up to the modern day, it's a story of immense continuity, deep contradiction, and ultimate survival, all rooted in one single plot of Virginia soil. It really proves that history isn't just something we read about. Sometimes it's a place you can still walk through today.